SEC This Morning.
SEC This Morning.
You're not the conductor, though. You're more the clown.
You give me so much hell because you love me.
On Sirius XM SEC Radio.
That's what I love about doing this show. We celebrate all 14 schools.
The SEC This Morning. Here's Peter Burns and Chris Doering.
Indeed, it is us two. Welcome into SEC This Morning. I am Peter Burns. That is the Governor.
Hello, Governor.
Hello, Governor. A little sad, right? Not because I spent all my money on Black Friday shopping or we're doing Cyber Monday stuff, but the regular season is done.
Yeah.
It's over. No more regular season games here in this conference.
I thought we were going to talk about sad because of all the firings that have taken place as well.
Absolutely.
We'll get into some of that, too.
We knew Chad Morris was out at Arkansas, but news came out Barry Odom relieved from his duties out in Missouri, and then Matt Luke no longer going to be the head coach over at Ole Miss. We'll talk about that, plus all of the games. College football playoff picture gets a little bit clearer. Also, SEC championship is set. We'll preview that matchup, but let's get into a little SEC scoreboard.
Now, let's get caught up with all the latest scores and news in the Southeastern Conference.
A lot of stuff to get into.
It's time for the SEC scoreboard.
All right, let's start with the Iron Bowl. I love this. I love rivalry week. I love games that are just wacky. I love the fact that 48-45 happened because I got no dog in this fight. I wanted to see a good game, and I was entertained. Are you not entertained? I was entertained, Governor.
Anybody that was not entertained by this ball game needs to find another sport to watch because it had everything we could possibly ask for.
That hit
we
my
had
shivers.
Defensive scores. We had explosive plays on offense. We had kick returns in the special teams game. And at the end of the day, Auburn was able to put up 48 points.
What?
Not just by the contribution to the offense, but they got it in all three phases, and that ends up being the most points allowed under Nick Saban during his time in Tuscaloosa.
Think about that. 2 pick sixes from this Auburn defense. Most points allowed ever under Saban. Bulovas missed that 30-yard field goal. And again, first time you've had a 2-loss regular season for an Alabama team since 2010. That's crazy when you think about everything that went down, including 13 penalties. And the last play of the game, Gus Malzahn trying to keep Jalen Waddle off the field, elects to go kind of a quick kick. And sure enough, Alabama had too many players on because of substitution. Here's Nick Saban about that.
You know, I really feel that it was pretty unfair play at the end of the game. They substituted the punter as a wide receiver, so we put the punt team in. And then when the quarterback was still in there, we tried to put the defense back in. I thought they should have given us a little more time to substitute and get Waddle out as a returner. We get called for 12 guys on the field. So that was very disappointing. We're responsible for that as coaches. But it was a very unusual circumstance, to say the least. And I think, you know, sometimes when you have those, that, you know, they should be viewed that way.
To win the Iron Bowl, this is what happens. Real proud of our team. I faced a lot of adversity. We said all week, we get the fourth quarter, we'll win. Sure enough, they missed a field goal, and we put the game away. And a great win for us.
It's an awesome feeling, and it's awesome. I mean, all this is great, and getting a win, that's all that mattered, and we won the game.
It's my senior night. We were able to come out here and get a win. Thanks to offense for putting up all those points. We were able to stay strong on defense in the fourth quarter, and we came out victorious tonight. We played the toughest schedule in college football. It's not even close, and we got a chance for 10 wins now. I'm real proud of our team.
How would you describe this right now? It's like a party down here on the field, and everybody's stormed it.
It's 87,400 of my closest friends.
And how are you going to get out of here?
I'm about to dance my way out somehow.
One play doesn't win or lose the game. There were a lot of other plays in the game that put us in the situation that we were in. So, and I know nobody feels worse about it than Joe. He's, you know, a great young man.
Just chaos, right? And that's what we've come to expect in the Iron Bowl. And there's so much to unpack about Alabama. That's the third straight loss that they've had against a top 25 team, right? Going back in 2019 to national championship game, to the LSU game, to Auburn. They faced 3 top 25 teams. They lost them all. But ultimately, What did you take away from Auburn winning this game?
I thought it was exactly what we needed to see from Auburn as a team in order to win games this year. All right, now they've been going with a freshman quarterback who hasn't got much support in their losses, but what they did in this game was got help from the special teams.
Yeah.
The average starting position for Auburn was the 43-yard line, so they had to go much shorter fields than what they've had to go in other games. The defense scores 2 touchdowns for them there, so a contribution on that end. And if you look at Bo Nix's stat line, it's not going to wow you. 15 of 30, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, but most importantly, no interceptions.
Absolutely.
He didn't put his team in bad situations like we had seen him do in previous losses. I thought it was a complete performance from Auburn.
Yeah, and again, we go back and look at how hard it was, right, to take down Nick Saban, because that is the gold standard in college football, right? Even Dabo's trying to get to that point over at Clemson and with the great teams that he's had. Gus Malzahn has now won 2 of the last 3. And that's something that hardly anyone in this conference, and really, Nate, college football has ever been able to do.
Nobody walking the planet that's coaching college football right now has beaten Nick Saban more than what Gus Malzahn has. Les Miles has done it the same number of times.
Right.
But that's a pretty good little feather in your cap that you've been able to do that 3 times in this era where Nick Saban's gotten more guys fired than we could probably name here in the show.
Think about Jim Harbaugh, right? 0-5 in that game against Ohio State, where Michigan has lost 15 of the last 16. That is a rivalry,
if
right?
If we know one thing from this week is that rivalry games matter.
Oh,
Go back and look at what's happened at the Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
It saved one guy's job. It got the other guy probably fired at the end of the day. So this was a game that matters a lot. This was a game that mattered to the country. And a lot of people around this planet now are celebrating Alabama not being in the college football playoffs for the first time since the inception.
I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but they are celebrating, right? Like, because they want something different in the college football playoff. I guarantee you the committee is absolutely celebrating this, and for no other reason, the fact that it makes their decision easier. Not that they pull against Alabama at any means. It's just now that there's one less team that they have to worry about, because Alabama was not making the Final Four after halftime. And the reason why I said that, the defense did not look unequivocally better. And I think ultimately we saw those injuries continue to pile up, and that's just tough for any team to get by.
I actually think all the adversity that they faced starting at the beginning of the season with McMillan getting injured and Moses getting injured and then Tua along the way, the fact that they've been able to do what they've done despite all of that adversity, despite all the freshmen that they're playing up front, I actually think it's a pretty good game, pretty good season as a whole for Alabama. But the way they measure successful seasons is not by top 10 finishes. It's not by going to New Year's Six bowl games. It's by playing in the college football playoffs.
It's pass or fail. Did you win a national championship for Alabama? The question will be no, or the answer will be no. Let's continue to move on in other games. Clean, old-fashioned hate. Well, how about clean, old-fashioned love? You got to love the box score, right? 52-7. Defense showed up. The only thing is, and I feel like we talk about the negatives for Georgia each and every week. I'm not going to do that right now. I mean, defense did exactly what they were able to do. It's survive and advance. The problem is George Pickens got into a little altercation.
Yeah, one guy won't be advancing, at least for the first half of that SEC championship game, because of a selfish decision. But you look at his impact and what he potentially could have been meant.
Right.
I think more importantly, the number is when Cager's not in the lineup. But Pickens was the guy that looks a lot like Cager. He's got the length. He's got athletic ability. He can be that guy that can catch the back shoulder throws from in the red zone. And now he's not going to be there for the first half of that ball game because he made a selfish and immature decision to get wrapped up away from the play nonetheless.
Yeah. He was already out for the first half of that game because of internal discipline. So you would think, hey, listen, I got to be on my best behavior. I know when I got grounded as a kid, I'm like, man, I got to be.
At least for the first 6
minutes of my life, right? However, Pickens put his team in a bad situation, and you just can't do that, especially because the path for Georgia is simple. Win, and you're in. Mm-hmm. There's no one that's debating that at that point, and yet now they're not going to have an offensive game changer for them, especially with Cager being out against arguably a track meet in LSU's offense.
Well, you would think that they're going to have to score points, and that's not something that Georgia's done all that well this year. I think if you look at it as a whole, let's start with the negative right now. I think that Jake Fromm has regressed this season. I think his recognition pre-snap, one of the things that was that he did really well, has taken a step back. In accuracy, I thought he's been incredibly accurate in the first 2 seasons in Athens. This year, not so much. I don't know whether to attribute that to the fact that Jim Chaney's no longer around or the fact that he's dealing with a lot of young wide receivers. Is probably a combination of all of the above. But the great thing about it, now the positives for Georgia, that defense again was lights out. They allowed 40 yards passing for Georgia Tech on the afternoon. They were physical. They tackled well. They gave up 1 touchdown. So if you're going to have to go into a ball game where you're playing against a great offense like they will against LSU, you may not be able to score a lot of points, but you don't give up a lot of points either.
In a weird way, think about this, how bad that offense was. It could help you in 2 different ways. One, you still have an opportunity to win a national championship. Everything is in front of you right now. And Jake Fromm likely is coming back to Athens, right? I don't think he's done enough to help his NFL stock. And coming back with a lot of talent, that could help, obviously the rest of this season, but coming back next year might be huge as well. But you're talking about LSU. Let's get into that game because the College Football Playoff Committee did not do Texas A&M any favors. And what I mean by that is they said, LSU, you're not the number 1 team in the country any longer. Ohio State is, because you're not complete. Doering, you nailed this. You said that's the worst thing that could have happened to the Aggies because LSU was going to come out determined. Finally, you said something right on this show.
Well, it's taken 14 weeks, but I've gotten to that point where I've said something.
Better late than never, baby.
And you know what? Over that 14-week span, this dude right here has been on absolute fire. I said it earlier. The thing I love best about Joe Burrow, of all the great things I can say about him, is consistency. Look at that completion percentage. He's going to shatter the SEC record. He's going to break the NCAA record held by Colt McCoy. He set the passing record and tied Drew Lock in terms of touchdowns. That's an incredible season for a guy last year that people questioned if he was even the right fit for what LSU was going to do going forward.
He was right fit, and one of the scenes that I loved is him coming out of the tunnel, and you can check it out on LSU's football Twitter account and Instagram account. It's great. They did like this Martin Scorsese shot of him following into Tiger Stadium on his last home game and wearing Joe Burrow. Burreaux. He is an adopted son, and he's a guy like Billy Cannon. He's a guy like Pistol Pete Maravich, Shaquille O'Neal, Bob Pettit will live in the lore of LSU football, really the school itself.
How about that? He shows up for 2 years and puts his name amongst the athletic greats that have ever played at LSU.
And won the Heisman.
And I love the quote. I'm going to say it again. He said, Death Valley is a place where opponents' dreams come to die. It's a place where his dream came to fruition, and he has loved his time there, and even more so, the fans have loved having him in Baton Rouge.
That is just crazy. And if you get a chance, go to the Twitter account and listen to it because the audio is incredible, right? Just him going to the equipment managers over there and saying, you know what, I came up with this earlier in the week. Everybody felt okay with it. And just the fact that was an appreciation that he became the adopted son. You don't like that, CD?
I love it, but how did nobody think of that earlier?
I know, they did earlier. Okay. But here's the deal. Burrow did not want the number 18. Right? And that's to personify the leaders at LSU that Jacob Hester and all those guys wore, because I don't think he felt like he had earned it. It wasn't that important to him. And so that was finally him embracing it. Hey, LSU fans, I'm here for you. You have supported me. And this has been great. And this is one of the reasons why the graduate transfer rule was fantastic. Kid graduated in 3 years and now has an opportunity to bring LSU not only an SEC championship, but a national title.
It's a tremendous story. In a season where we've seen so many quarterbacks go down, this guy's been able to stay healthy. He's played at a high level the entire year. And I love the storybook potentially that sets up with them. If they can win 3 more games, what we'll be talking about how he ranks in this conference's history.
We talk about storylines. That's one that we had in Lexington in the Governor's Cup between Kentucky and Louisville. How about Lynn Bowden? 284 yards, 4 touchdowns. Mark Stoops says, hey, Louisville, we're going to run the ball. This is all we're going to do. Can you stop us? L's down, baby. It ain't happening. 45-13, an embarrassing win for the Wildcats, and they got to love it.
517 yards rushing as a team, and most importantly, the defense was lights out there. 6 sacks, 13 tackles for losses. They were awesome.
It was awesome, Clemson, and it pains me to say that, but that team is rounding into arguably one of the best teams in the country. Right there with Ohio State, right there with LSU. They just put a whooping early and often on Will Muschamp's Gamecocks.
Trevor Lawrence is playing right now in the second half of the season like we expected him to after the national championship game. It's taken some time, but I think you're right. People are going to overlook Clemson because of their schedule, but they may be the most dangerous team in the tournament at this point.
I don't think there's a doubt. How about your Gators? They hadn't beat Florida State in the swamp since 2009. Kyle Trask getting it done once again. Another 10-win season.
Another complete effort, too. Florida came out fast on offense. They scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions to put pressure on that FSU offense, and Florida's defense was lights out as well. 8 sacks on the afternoon.
Speaking of lights out, that's what Tennessee football has been playing, winning 6 of their last 7. And how about the freshmen? We've been talking about the seniors, right? They were so big. Eric Gray showing up.
Yeah, Eric Gray had 2 long runs, including a 94-yard touchdown right here. But how about the offensive line? It was a point of weakness last season for the Vols. Heading into the year, there were some question marks. Brandon Kennedy's played extremely well up front. Trey Smith's come back from the blood clots. And right now, there might not be a hotter team in the league than the Tennessee Vols.
I don't think there's a doubt. And ultimately, when it comes down to if we had to vote for SEC Coach of the Year, I think we all agree that Ed Ogeron's going to win it for the Tigers' run this year. I think I still go with Mark Stoops in Lexington would be number 2, but I'd put Jeremy Pruitt as number 3.
Why are we talking about those 2 guys? It's because of how they've dealt with adversity.
Sure.
And sometimes it's hard to deal with success, but in this case, it's hard to deal with adversity when you've lost the players that Mark Stoops has lost and been able to win 7 games. And when you start the season 0-2 with losses to Georgia State and BYU and to circle the wagons the way that Tennessee has, just a lot of credit goes to not only the coaching staff and Pruitt, but the players for not losing their mind. And in this day and age, there could have been a lot of negativity that separated that team, but they hung together in the locker room. Credit to those seniors that you mentioned.
Maybe the best thing to happen to Tennessee football was losing the way they did to Alabama when Garantano kind of went rogue, because I felt at that point they realized they were good enough to compete with anybody. They had enough talent. That was a circling of the wagons situation, and of course that's the reason why they're going bowling, have a chance to win 8 games, which I don't think anybody saw, especially after the 0-2 start. We got Missouri right now has made a coaching change. Barry Odom is out. Matt Luke is out at Ole Miss. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we got our top 5 and bottom 5 power rankings coming up next on SEC This Morning.